going to do here is we are going to I'm going to record a video of what things would look like if I were using this from a whiteboard. So one of the things we're talking about today, the topic that we're discussing today is testing, and one of the things that is important in testing is to test what we would call edge criteria. So imagine that if we had some kind of like a region, multiple different regions, where for our input we could have different values. So if we were have like a numerical type, so let's say in an example that we might have where a grocery store like a Migros or something like that would have like different types of sales, that if you spent at least 25 tele, for example, then you could have a certain inditem, a certain discount on some products. I'm sure many of you have experienced that before. So if you spend between 0 and 25, you don't get any type of discount. If you spend up to 25, if you spend 25 or more, then you get, say, some type of like 20% discount on a certain product, right? Okay, and then if you spend even more than that, let's say you spend 75 tele, then you can get, instead of 20% discount on that, you get like a 40% discount, right? Okay, so here you have these different regions, right? You have region 1. I'll use some different colors here. So you have this region over here. Then you have maybe like, so this region over here, and then you have this region over here. And what we want to do is we want to test in each of those regions. Okay, so we would like to have some type of test case from somewhere in this region here, a test case from inside of this region here, and a test case from inside of this region here. But there's also some other important spots that we want to test also. We want to test right here, right at the edge, right? Because this is the point at which things change, right? And this is the point at which things change, right, based on our input. So what we would do is we would have a test case that would be somewhere in between 0 and 25, but we would also want to test just below 25, so maybe something like, we might test something like 24.9, right? And we would also want to test right at 25, right? Make sure that got covered, and also maybe 25.1. Okay, so we want to test those edge criteria, something just above, just below, and right at our edge criteria. Same thing over here. We would test like 74.9, 75.0, and 75.1, something like that. Okay, and we would make sure that the returned values for each of those are what we expect them to be. Okay, and then we would also test somewhere in the middle, so maybe something like 50, but we don't have to test 50.1 or 49.9. We don't need to test the edge because there's no edge there, right? It's just somewhere in the middle. We just test something somewhere in the middle, make sure that the value we get back is what we expect it to be. We test something out here, so maybe like 100. It doesn't have to be super close to 475. It also doesn't have to be really far away. We don't need to necessarily test in the thousands if 75 is our highest edge. But then something you may not notice too is that there's also an edge over here. There's an edge at the 0 mark, right? So we want to make sure that what we expect to happen at 0, at 0.1, is what we would expect to happen. And in that edge too, we also want to know what's going to happen. What does our system expect if we have a negative? All right, what is our negative value? Right, what should our system give us an exception? Right? So sometimes we want to have an exception occur, an error occur if somebody puts in a negative value. Because what does a negative value mean for a grocery store receipt, HESOP? What does that mean? Do we do an exception? Do we just not do anything? Do we treat it like it's part of this section here? It's entirely up to the requirements of what our system is supposed to do. So, all right, so this is edge criteria. So just because when we're testing, we don't just want to test something in the middle, something in the middle, something in the middle. We want to also make sure that we test thoroughly. Because remember, the point of testing, as I'm going to say in the lecture, the point of testing is not for us to prove that the system works. We can never prove that the system works. All we can do is we can find the places where the system is not working, and that's what our intention. That's what our intention in testing is supposed to be. Okay, all right. So.